in chapter 14, and we are talking about the midah, the moral virtue of separation. The moral virtue of separation means that we're going to create boundaries in areas of our life where we are allowed to act. For example, can you swim, Lev?
Not well.
Not well. Okay. So if you're not a good swimmer, what boundary would you put on yourself?
Not to swim too far out.
Right, not to swim too far out. Right. I remember when my kids had to, we threw them in the pool to do the swim test, and they have to swim to whatever it is, and they swim and swim and swim. And once they pass, they realize that they could go everywhere in the pool because they get the green, because you had a green band. In the pool, you have a green band, it means you can go anywhere. Red means you have to stay within the parents' reach, and yellow means you can go a little bit, but not too far. So, one of my sons who got a green, although he could go anywhere, he didn't really trust his swimming abilities, and he would always stay close. So that he created a boundary for himself, because he didn't want to get to a point where he would be in the danger zone. Some of you have a certain problem called 20-year-old blonde, which means what? We are going to create a boundary where we know we might cross a line. So if we do have a friend, we would stay in public places. Because what are the chances of doing something that is not appropriate in a public place? Slim. Put boundaries, so that you don't, God forbid, fall. So that is the concept of separation. Separation, we try to establish boundaries in 3 areas, which we talked about yesterday. So I just want to summarize. Prishut b'anaot, prishut in areas separating ourselves from certain pleasures, such as food, physical pleasures. Another one is in dinim, in halacha, so that wherever there is a safek, we always take the more stringent position. It's not always clear what the stringent position is, so we have to check, we have to ask, we have to learn, we have to study. But whenever there is an option of going stringent or an option to go to the lenient position, we take the more stringent position. Why? He is not saying, Ramchal is not telling us it's for everybody, but if we want to reach the higher level of moral perfection and getting closer and closer to God, we should work on midat prishut. We should separate ourselves, create more boundaries, and therefore the chumras, the more stringent positions, are an aspect of our ethical, moral, and intellectual perfection or completion. The third area is with regard to minhagim, customs. One of the things that people do is we hang out with people. When you hang out, Alan, with people, what do you guys usually do?
We went on a trip.
You went on a trip. What did you do with your friends on a trip?
We went hiking.
Hiking. And while you were hiking, what were you doing? Talking about stuff, people, right? Once we come together as a group, or individuals come together, they speak, they say things, and all of those sort of things, sometimes we cross boundaries, right? We make fun of each other, we speak Lashon Hara sometimes, we may do other things that are inappropriate, we may embarrass somebody, oh, look at that, he fell in the water. Or lost his shoe, right? Whatever it is, the Ramchal is saying, place boundaries. It doesn't mean that you have to isolate yourself all the time. That would mean that you would be abnormal. What it means is that you should separate yourself a little bit. Have some time for yourself to be able to introspect, to reflect on where you're going with your life. What are you doing? How is it going? Evaluate in the sense of what he was talking about in the other midot of zrizut, of zehirut, of nikiyut. That is, where am I on the path? Am I going the right way? Am I not going the right way? Alan, you have a question? Go ahead.
All right. So let's say somebody bypasses those boundaries. Well, according to the Torah, how do we solve this?
Well, he has to do tshuva. It depends on what boundary he did. I mean, if he killed somebody, it's a different boundary than if he...
Oh, during talking, let's say he says something inappropriate.
Lashon hara? So the question is...
Lashon hara, something appropriate about, like, I don't know, like he says something to attack you.
He says, oh, you're an idiot.
Something like that.
He says, you're an idiot. So now, what could you do? You could say, you're the idiot. And he says, no, you're the idiot. And now what? Right? So now, in a sense, you haven't solved anything. I think, from a Jewish perspective, from the Torah perspective, we should not, there's a mitzvah not to seek revenge and not hold a grudge. Those are two mitzvahs. So if a guy says something to you, just let it go. A guy cannot argue with you if you're refusing to argue. And now you think of it as this way. I don't want to come out looking like a punk. The guy was putting me down. And if I don't stand up, I'm going to be looking like I am a wimp. And I'm not a wimp, man. Right? The Mishnah says in Pirkei Avot, Ezu hagibor hakovesh et yitzro. Who is considered a mighty person? A person who controls his desires. Your yetzer is you want to clock the guy. Right? Don't. So you know what? Thank you. You know what? Maybe we should end it here. Have a good day. And walk away. So the question is, we learned to getting the chumrah, and the idea is that you should create boundaries of the people that you hang out with. If you're hanging out, Alan, in places when people are calling you out, I don't know what that means. Calling me out, if somebody said to me, I was called out, I would think somebody would go, Alan, come out. Right? What does that mean?
Calling you out is basically, they're saying...
You're a wuss?
Yeah.
And that is an insult to your manliness.
No, it's not like they're just saying it around you. Like they're saying it straight up to start a fight.
Okay. And if you fight them,
Is to start a fight.
so then you walk away. So pay attention to those three areas. You should, as the advice that you heard from the group, choose the right people to hang out with. Choose the right people. The best way to acquire the midah, the moral virtue of separation, of prishut, is that the person should look at the griut, the fallibility, the weakness, the lacking of physical pleasure. Think of whatever physical pleasure that you seem to enjoy. Let's talk about, let's say, pizza. Right? Think about this. When you die, do you think they're going to say above your grave, and he was great. He loved eating pizzas. He ate 20 pizzas a week. You think that's what they're going to say about you? He used to go to the beach every day and eat ice cream. And would go every year on roller coaster rides. And would go driving everywhere. Playing loud music. Even at old age. That's who he was. The idea is this. What do you think? What do they want? What do you want people to say when you're gone?
He was a tzaddik.
Okay. You know, I back in America, I did a class. It was a workshop on how to write an ethical will. There is a tradition in Judaism that besides writing a will, I leave this, this toilet cleaner to my son, I leave this house to my neighbor, whatever the list of stuff. But there's also, if you only knew my neighbor. I was actually present at reading of wills, and you should see what people did with their money. Like the family thought they're getting all this money, and we gave all the money to the butler. What? And the guy's like, oh, thank you. And the family's like, you did this. The ethical will is what is the message that the person wants to leave for his descendants. And I told him that your message is not only for your children or your grandchildren, because your ethical will today could survive for hundreds and hundreds of years. We have ethical wills that were written 500, 600, 700, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. I read with them wills that were written, that is, letters that parents wrote to their children in the Holocaust. These are the last letters that people left to their children. They knew they were going to die. And they said, here's how I want you to live your life. That's an idea of ethical will. Think about it. What would you leave behind? Enjoy every day. Eat as much ice cream. Have a sponge bath all the time. Stay in the water as long as you want. Go swimming every Tuesday. What would you put down? Eat great steak. Have a great bottle of wine. That's it? Is that what we want to put down? Go hang out, go clubbing all the time. If that's what the message is, then fix your life to live that way. If that's what you want to leave behind, that's what you need to do. Because the greatest tool to educate people is by example. By example. The way that you live your life is the way that your children and their descendants are going to learn about what's important in life. If you show them that it's more important to fight and to maintain your reputation as opposed to having good morals and walk away, then that's what they're going to think. A person's reputation is important. Shlomo HaMelech says, Shem Tov mi Shemen Tov. A good reputation is better than money in the bank. It's true, you're right. But the good reputation is not that I could take down any guy that looks at me. That doesn't mean to have a good name. A good name is what Tuvia said, that the person is a tzaddik, it's a righteous person. That a person who gives you, if you give your word, you stick to it. That a person is medagdeg, he's very careful whether it's a penny or millions of dollars. He will treat it as just as important. So then in order to acquire the midah of separation, the way to establish aspects of separation in your life is to look at the physical pleasures that you enjoy and see them for what they are. Food, sleep, all those things. All the things that are, we do and we enjoy and it's great. The Ramchal is telling us, I'm not telling you it's not great, but don't forget, it's gone like this. Right? When you eat, you're hungry. When you eat, you enjoy your food left. And people think, I'm telling, this is, the same thing with regards to relations with girls. If they told you the following, do you like being with a girl when let's say she's your wife, and you say, you know what, 3 times a day, but you get to eat 3 times a week. Right? 3 times a day you can be, but you eat only 3 times a week. Comes Friday night, what would you prefer? Eating or going to the sack again? That's the point, right? The idea is, again, that these are pleasures, but there are things that we need and there are things that we want. And have a clear understanding of what we need as opposed to what we want. And the things that we need, we should have, but create boundaries so that we don't desire them more than what we need. And when you create boundaries, then you all of a sudden you see that you have a better control of your body, of the desires, of things that are going, the internal processes, and you're more aware of them. And that is the beginning and the end, almost, of your moral perfection. Says the Ramchal that we have to remember some of the physical goods that we experience provide, this is what he says, כוזב לגמרי, מדומה ובלי שום התמדה נכונה, והרע בו אמיתי, או קרוב להיוולד ממנו באמת. It appears to be good for us, but in reality it is bad for us. We think it is good for us, but there's an aspect to it that is very bad for us. And where do we learn this from? the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden. The fruit was beautiful to the eyes, pleasing to the eyes, tasted great, was less filling. So he says that if we focus on lots of things that they may be good, appear to be good, but they're really bad for us. And there's every single food that we probably eat, there is a study that says it's bad for us. Every single food. Right? Every single food they say, this, you eat this, it's bad. This is bad. Now, so Tuvi says, wait a minute. It's all when you do it too much. If you eat in moderation, then it should be okay. Right? That's a boundary. That's boundary. You just told me now, oh, there's a boundary. That's what the Ramchal is telling us. Put boundaries. There are things that we need, establish boundaries. And there's another way to acquire the midah of separation. And he says at the end, he says the following. והנה, כמו שהמתבונן על זה הדבר גורם קניית הפרישות, כך שכלותו מפסיד אותו. They are in the same way that thinking about the effects of what we're doing and what does it actually do to us. If we don't think about it, it causes us to lose our moral perfection. That is, when we don't take the time to think about the consequences of our actions, the consequences of what we do, then that will harm us. Okay, so that not thinking is harming us. Thinking and putting boundaries allows us to acquire the moral perfection. And so he says that the most important thing, he says that what Shlomo HaMelech said, it's better to go to Bet Avel, it's better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a Bet Mishteh, to a party. It's better to go to a house where they have mourning than to go to a party. How many of you would agree with that? Nobody. No way. You got a party, music, dancing, right?
If you called the house of mourning a party, I would go.
So, but the point is, in the house of mourning, what does it focus you on? It focuses you on what is important in life. Because a person left this world. We're also going to leave this world. And then when you leave this world, you're going to stand before the Creator. And they're going to show you the tape of you taking on this Italian guy. And they're going to say, what were you thinking over here? Well, man, he insulted our Judaism. Okay, Pinchas. Right? Well, you're the jealous one. You're going to be the zealot. And okay, so you beat him up. Now what? What was that? You think that was the right thing to do? Well, I guess not. Okay, take the elevator down. Pitchforks, right? The idea is that when a house of mourning, you hear about how a person lived their life. And you hear what the person did, and you hear what's important in life. It's very hard for us. It's very hard for us to stay on task all the time. Because stuff happens. The Ramchal said earlier that when we're busy, we're trying to earn a living, we're trying to, move ahead in life, all those sort of things take our eye off the ball of what's important. When what's the most important thing? Our connection to Hashem. Why? Because our connection to Hashem is the way that we will feel, we will get ultimate pleasure. And that is the goal of human life.